Good morning. My name is Lisa Ng, and I head up the PSC Secretariat, which manages PSC scholarship holders. With me, I have Ms. Ong Toon Hui, who is Secretary of the Public Service Commission and concurrently Deputy Secretary Leadership at the Public Service Division, as well as the Dean and CEO of the Civil Service College. We also have Ms. Gail Teo, one of our PSC scholarship holders. Hi, Gail, who has now joined the public service, who will be our moderator for today. I would now like to invite Secretary of the Public Service Commission, Ms. Ong Toon Hui, to deliver her opening remarks. Secretary, please.
Thank you very much, Lisa. A very good morning, students, parents, teachers, and school counselors. Thank you so much for taking time off your precious Saturday to join us for this virtual information session. We are expecting over 1,000 participants to join us this morning from various institutions. And we are really delighted to be able to host you this morning. And for the students in our midst, we hope to share with you this morning a little bit about what the public sector does, the work we do, so that to enthuse you to consider a career with us. Let me start by just talking a little bit about the Singapore Public Service. I usually like to describe it as like a multinational corporation, MNC. It's large and very diverse with multiple lines of business. We are 145,000 strong, spread over 16 ministries and over 50 statutory boards. Although we are diverse, we have one common mission, which is to serve Singapore and Singaporeans and ensure that our nation remains successful and vibrant. This year, the public service has been really put fully to the test by COVID-19. Over the last 6 months, my colleagues and I have worked very hard across the different agencies to tackle the pandemic on various fronts. So for example, our policy officers have to work hard to deliver 5 budgets, to enact legislation on COVID-19 temporary measures, as well as to keep our supply and trade lines open. Our teachers in schools have to deliver home-based learning and in a creative way. We have colleagues on the ground doing contact tracing and also enforcing the quarantine and safe distancing measures. And our colleagues in the Social Services Office continue to take good care of the vulnerable segments of our population and to deliver financial assistance. And not forgetting our engineers and scientists who work hard behind the scenes to develop tech solutions. So for example, the Trace Together app, as well as test kits and vaccines. We are slowly turning our attention to see how we can recover and emerge stronger from the crisis. Those of you who have been following the parliamentary debates over the last few days would have an idea of the challenges ahead and the work that we need to do. And the public service is an integral part of that. So the work in the public service is meaningful and deeply satisfying. And we provide a lot of choice and options to cater to individuals with different interests and strengths. Let me now speak a little about scholarships, public sector scholarships. One common question we are asked is, what do we look out for when awarding scholarships? First, a scholarship is not just a way to fund your tertiary education local or abroad. No, it is a nice sounding title. Actually, a public sector scholarship is a commitment to serve Singapore through a public sector career. When you apply for a public sector scholarship, you're actually applying to join the public sector as an employee. And therefore, we look out for individuals who share our ethos and values. And the public service values can be summed up in 3 words: integrity, service, and excellence. Do you have the courage to speak the truth and to do the right thing? That is integrity. Are you prepared to put the nation and the citizens' interests above your own? That is service. And do you go the extra mile and have the drive to really understand an issue and develop workable solutions to serve the greater group. That is excellence. And therefore, we look for individuals who are really prepared to commit to serving others, to walk the ground with them, to understand and empathize with them, and to stay attuned to ground concerns. And therefore, when circumstances change or new issues or problems arise, we also expect public officers to be bold and able to reimagine ideas and solutions and to seize those opportunities. And actually, COVID-19 is one example of such a disruption, and it kind of affirms our belief that the service must continue to remain agile, resilient, and innovative. And therefore, because of this, we need to bring in a diversity of talents, experience, and perspective into the public service. And this affects actually and guides the way the PSC selects and develops our scholarship holders. As a group, we would like them to go to and study in a variety of universities and study in a variety of subject matter and domain areas, so that they bring back fresh thinking, new approaches to problem solving, and new networks and friendships for Singapore. And it is also for this reason that we encourage our scholarship holders to go to different countries of study, beyond the traditional US or UK, but locally, East Asia, China, Japan, down under, and also the rest of Europe, like France and Germany. This year, we had to make some adjustments due to the COVID-19 and the pandemic situation. For those who were awarded overseas scholarship, we have concurrently given them local offers in order to give them flexibility to adjust should the situation change. And we find that actually the scholarship holders, they make different decisions. We have some who have actually taken the decision and have proceeded with their overseas studies, of course with adequate safeguards and measures. There were some who chose to start their first term with distance learning with the support of their universities. And we also have individuals who have chosen to defer their studies by 1 or 2 years with good reasons. So we do provide flexibility and options to cater to the individual circumstances of the scholarship holders. And we will continue to monitor the global situation and make the necessary adjustments. One thing that will not change, which is our conviction that Singapore must remain open, be open to the world, and be plugged into global developments. And for this reason, the Public Service Commission will continue to send our scholarship holders to many parts of the world. And we just have to make contingency plan depending on the situation. So today, we have invited a very special group of people to join this forum. They are your seniors, the scholarship recipients of different agencies and different professions. And they are here to share with you their career journey and experience. So with that, thank you very much for your presence this morning, and I wish you a fruitful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary, for opening remarks. And thank you, Director, for the welcome. You mentioned that the public service is full of varied talents and experiences. And indeed, today, we have a panel that is very diverse and also very eager to talk to our audience. So let's jump straight to it. My name is Gail, and I'm your moderator for today. May I invite our first group of panelists on screen to introduce their names, their agencies, and what they do. First up, we have Deng Qing. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Gail, for the introduction. So my name is Deng Qing, and I'm a scholar with the Accountant General's Department. I graduated from accountancy in NUS, and after graduation, I joined AGD as part of the Finance Associates program. At AGD, my main job scope was staffing the internal audit shared services function, I focus on the infrastructure ministries such as the Ministry of Transport and Ministry of Sustainability and Environment. I also did short stints in the corporate development division where I did finance procurement, and I also did dabbled in a little bit of financial systems implementation. So now I'm with the Ministry of Finance looking at infrastructure funding policies, and my specific area is public transport, which I'm sure is very close to our hearts for many of us.
Yes.
Yeah, so very happy to be here today and look forward to a fruitful discussion ahead.
Yes, very excited to hear more. Next up, we have Jia Qi.
Hi everyone. A very good morning to all of you. I'm Jia Qi from the Auditor General Office and AGO in short. So I was awarded the inaugural AGO Auditing Scholarship in 2014 where I finished my A-levels in Victoria Junior College. So I graduated from the NUS in 2018, which is 2 years ago, where I studied accounting in NUS Business School. So currently I'm an audit officer in AGO, and throughout my 2 years here, I have been auditing the various ministries and statutory boards in the education and security sector. So currently I'm actually doing the financial statements audits of MAS. And in terms of what I do on a daily basis, so actually AGO is accountable to the public because we want to ensure that funds are used properly. So audit fieldwork will comprise of like site visits and meetings with audited agencies to understand more about their work. So I'm really happy to be here today, and I hope to share more with you later on.
Yes, looking forward to hearing more. Third, we have Joshua joining us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Joshua, and I'm a scholar of the Singapore Legal Service. I studied for 3 years at University College London before pursuing a master's in law at the New York University. I then went on to be a prosecutor at the Attorney General's Chambers here, focusing on public order and hurt-related offences, before I moved on to my current posting, which is at the Ministry of Law's Civil and Legislative Policy Division. So my current job scope requires me to look at legislation that is being put forth by other ministries to determine whether or not this legislation complies with the rule of law in Singapore, as well as to advocate pieces of reform that relate to legal issues in Singapore, such as court procedure, harassment law, and online falsehoods.
Very exciting. Ready to hear more. But last but not least, we have Fanny.
Everyone. So my name is Fanny. So I was awarded the PSC Open Scholarship in 2012. Prior to that, I was actually a student in Ngee Ann Polytechnic, and I graduated with a diploma in mass communication. So after I was awarded the scholarship, I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which is a small liberal arts college in New York, to do my degree in liberal arts. And then after that, I did my master's in public policy in the University of Oxford. So I spent some time in the US and the UK. After I graduated, I came back in 2016, where I actually started out in the Ministry of Home Affairs. And after 2 years, I actually moved on and am currently in the Ministry of Transport, Sea Transport Division. So I help develop policies on Singapore's Global Hub Port and our International Maritime Centre. So looking forward to all your questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. The four of you have really distinct pathways. We really want to dig into those pathways. So if you could explain how you ended up before the workplace, please explain your education pathway. Share 1 to 2 meaningful stories that you feel really exemplify your education pathway, please. Who would like to take a stab at going first?
So I can take a stab. Being a PSC Open Scholar, at that time when during my studies, in my university studies, PSC was very encouraging for me to pursue, for example, things outside like my area of study, which was mainly politics and economics. So one program that I did was over the summer, where I actually went to Tsinghua University in Beijing, China, to study environment and sustainability, because climate change is something that I'm interested in as well. So when I was there, I got to interact with a lot of students from other Chinese universities, and I got to visit like Beijing's largest waste management plant. And I think it was very good exposure. I mean, for example, in seeing different things, meeting different people from different countries, like getting a global perspective before I came back to the public service to start work.
Yeah.
Actually, I find it really interesting because I also did a short internship of sorts in China. So I spent a month interning at an NGO in China that does food safety. So I actually went down to the schools and communities to talk to people about food safety in Mandarin, no less. So that was really a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, hearing you both makes me want to go.
Yeah, and because at the same time, I was also working kind of part-time at a social enterprise in Singapore that does bookkeeping services for charities and NGOs. So it was really interesting for me, kind of comparing the ecosystem between the two countries. And, you know, that kind of like, other than internships, doing that kind of real world exposure actually puts things that we learn in school into perspective. And I think the best part about it is that you get to meet a lot of people who are so passionate about what they do. And that's also something that I really enjoy about working in public service, because everywhere in a service, I meet people who are so passionate about helping citizens and really just doing their best to help make Singapore a better country for us all.
So my experience is a bit different from the other two of them. I did not really spend my time honing my Mandarin skills. But in a similar vein, I did really enjoy the experience of being exposed to people from different cultures and backgrounds during my university time. I found that to be especially the case during my time at New York University, especially when I was doing mock trial. It allowed us to simulate the experience of being in a courtroom, and we got the chance to visit different universities across the US and interact with students from a variety of backgrounds who were also interested in engaging in mock trial. And I thought that across the schools there was quite a strong diversity in their student cohort. There'd be people from South America, people from Africa, people from the Middle East. So that was one of the things that I was very grateful for in terms of having an overseas education.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Actually, for myself, I was really fortunate to go for a 6-month exchange program in Canada. So it was really the best part of my university life, because I got to experience what living abroad was all about and to learn about the cultures of other countries. So I think one experience that I remembered was that I actually worked with Canadians for a group project where we raised funds via a squash competition. So it was called Squash Cancer. It was really a meaningful one, something that I will take away with me.
Yes, I'm sure you have many stories about learning to work with different cultures in Canada, but we'll get to that later. I wanted to ask, why did you apply for the scholarship? What were your thought processes when you were first applying? This should be very helpful to our audience right here.
I guess for me, it was like, it seems very like politically correct, but so I was very confused as like as an 18-year-old as well, wondering what to do next, you know, what's the step. So I actually went to see my school career counselor, okay. But basically we kind of had a conversation, and he asked, so what is one thing that we are really passionate about that you feel that's something that you really want to change? So I said that I felt like resources aren't always deployed to places that really need it. So we have, let's say, the resources, but they are not being used to solve the problems that most need solving. So then it kind of inspired me, and that is why I'm here in public sector finance, because here I get to play a small role in helping to make sure that there's accountability of our taxpayers' monies, and to make sure that we're really spending our money where we need it the most and where we can maximize the impact. Yeah, and especially this year with COVID and all, and you know that MOF has rolled out a series of budgets that's like to the tune of 100 billion. So that's really, really something that it emphasizes to me why I joined the public sector in the first place.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
What
about you?
Yeah, just to leverage on Deng Qing's point, I totally agree with her, because when I applied for the scholarship, I looked through the list of scholarship. I was really quickly drawn to this auditing service scholarship, because it struck to me that I wouldn't just be an ordinary auditor in a Big Four private auditing firm. I'll be doing something extra meaningful because I'm doing a greater purpose of ensuring that there's public accountability. So I guess at 18, my understanding of auditing was really at a very basic level.
Yeah.
Yes, but one thing I knew for sure was that AGO plays an important role in enhancing public accountability, and through their audits, I knew I wanted to be part of this greater purpose because it definitely resonated with my personal values and beliefs of integrity and independence. So I kind of felt my calling and decided to apply for it.
I see. Very nice. Speaking of your greater purpose and your calling, here's a question to the speakers. Well, could you commit to a job that is 6 years? When you apply for your scholarship, do you think of the job or the scholarship or the college experience or other factors?
I think for myself, I was the thing that did draw me to take up the scholarship was actually the job in question. So, I mean, actually, when I was 18, I was really just focused on doing as well as I possibly could for my international baccalaureate exams. So I hadn't really applied my mind to what I was going to do after I graduated. And so, like, you know, the moment my exams were over, I was like, what do I do with my life now? I really enjoy public speaking and debate. Maybe I should pursue a career related to that.
You enjoy grilling people.
Yes, I enjoy making people feel very uncomfortable in the courtroom.
Excellent. You're suited.
Yes. So I mean, I did an internship at a local law firm, and I followed a litigation partner around, and I did like the work that he did. So then the question proceeded to, you know, what sort of career I should be looking at if I do go to law school. And he actually recommended me to take up a scholarship with the Singapore Legal Service, because he said that if I really wanted to do courtroom work right from the get-go, he would advise me to join the government, because if I had a chance to be a prosecutor, that would allow me to start appearing in court within a month of starting work. You know, whereas if I had joined the private sector, I think it would have taken me a while to earn the right with the vis-a-vis the other law firm partners to appear in court. So it was the idea of being able to stand on my own 2 feet quickly that made me take up the scholarship and have a chance to join the Singapore Legal Service thereafter.
Very nice. We can imagine 18-year-olds, Joshua, Deng Ting, and all of you. What about the others?
So if I could add on, I think there are many reasons why people apply for scholarships, but at least about now that I'm 3 or 4 years in the job, I feel like a large percentage of why you should apply and why I applied was because of the job. So to sort of leverage on your previous question as well, I think the reason why I applied for a scholarship was a bit different from my other panelists here. So I was actually from a polytechnic route. So I mean, for me, it didn't occur to me to apply for a scholarship when I was in polytechnic. That just wasn't at the top of our minds at that time. But what happened was that my school actually flagged up the scholarship to me, and that was what got me interested. And in the end, I did apply because at that time I was interested in journalism, like humanitarian journalism. So my school, and I totally agree with them, was that I felt like my values aligned a lot with the job. So like the whole reason I was interested in journalism was because, you know, I wanted to serve, you know, like report on people who, you know, usually were not featured in the media, that sort of thing. So then thinking very hard about it, I realized that my values were pretty aligned to the job in the public service. And I have found that, you know, throughout my rotations, be it my current ministry, my previous ministry, or my internships before I started work officially, like I think that is a common thread that keeps me going and motivates me, that knowing that my work goes to serving my community.
Yes. No, thank you for sharing. Penny, as your batchmate, I want to say that even if the younger you didn't think of applying to a scholarship, I'm glad you ended up here.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're in the same batch. Others, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, actually for me, right, one reason I applied to AGD is also because they offer really a diversity of experiences. So as an 18-year-old, I'm sure it's the same with all of you. I was really very scared that, you know, if I decide to go into this path now, what if 4 years down the road after I graduate from university, I don't really like what I'm getting myself into, you know. You're really afraid that you change your mind down the road. So actually one thing that really attracted me to AGD was because there's really whole range of roles that you can take up. So as I mentioned, I was doing internal audit, I was doing finance operations, I was doing systems implementation, and now I'm doing policy work. And my other friends, they're doing so many different things like treasury work, or even things like you know, like our usual like budgeting and all that. So I mean, it gave me the assurance that even if I wasn't, you know, keen on this specific role that I was in, I could always find something else that would appeal to my particular interests or areas of expertise. So this is something that I think really exemplifies, you know, like one career, many opportunities.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Actually, if I could just add on that, Gail, you mentioned earlier how we felt about taking up a 6-year bond with the Singapore government. But I think one important point is that, you know, we weren't really committing ourselves to like one specific job for 6 years. And the great thing about being in government is that you can change your mind more than once. So for example, for me, I mean, I started as a prosecutor and I came into the legal service thinking that, you know, that was going to be the job for me. But you know, while it's at AGC, they gave us an opportunity to do attachments at other ministries. So I worked at MOM for 3 months, you know, giving advice to the ministry. Before I went to the Ministry of Law to do another 3 months attachment. And I really enjoyed my time in the Ministry of Law. I really liked policy making.
Yes.
It was completely different from what I did as a prosecutor.
So different.
As a prosecutor, you know, you handle like drug traffickers, murderers, people fighting outside zoo. But at the Ministry of Law, it's very different. You're focusing on like drafting policies, looking at things at a much more big picture. So now I'm dealing with harassment laws and online falsehood. So it's completely different.
Yes.
But yeah, I still managed to make this transition within my 6-year my 6-year bond. I still managed to change my mind.
Thank you for pointing out. I think changing your mind means something that the public, more like the public sector is a place that lets you grow alongside. And I 100% agree, because my first job was as a data scientist at GovTech. And then I'm now at MSF doing policy making. I 100% agree that the transition is always a little bit of a shock, as with all career transitions for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things about working in public sector. Like, you have to be really very adaptable. And I mean, I think it's quite typical of many of our career paths that we really do very different things every like 2 to 3 years. So I think that's one very useful skill, that you are very open-minded about taking up opportunities. And also, I think that's another thing that is very good about public sector, because you are always given a choice whether you want to generalize or specialize in any area. I think there are sufficient opportunities for you to decide to chart your own career path ahead.
Yes, indeed. So the next question is very related. It's about what keeps the 4 of you excited and motivated in the public sector. But while you think about that question, we got a question directed to Joshua, where the person said, "Thank you for the enriching sharing." And I wanted to acknowledge the person who asked. Thank you for posting your question. Joshua, this is for you. Would the first posting to the AGC be a DPP? How much work is prosecution related as opposed to policy making, as most government agencies do? You're well suited to answer this question. So maybe hit us with 30 seconds before we go to the...
Well, I mean, if Deng Ting or Fanny wants to answer that question, sure. But yes, I think in general, for the first posting in the Singapore Legal Service, they try to develop your basic skills, but it doesn't have to be as a prosecutor. So the 2 other postings that they generally encourage officers to take up for their first posting is also at the civil advisory, the civil division of the Attorney General's chambers. So their job scope is to help ministries draft contracts, to render advice to ministries as to whether or not what the government can do is in accordance with the law, as well as represent the government where there's a judicial review challenge, i.e. someone is challenging a government's actions in court. So the civil division has quite a broad job scope, and it's a popular posting as well amongst young officers. And the third posting is also the Legal Aid Bureau, where young officers get to help poor families represent their interests in courts. So they deal with a lot of family justice sort of situations where people can't afford legal representation on their own. And that's where Legal Aid Bureau helps in to provide representation to these people. So these are the three popular postings.
Yeah. It is super fascinating. I could spend the whole day listening to you folks talk about the law, but I'm also conscious that there are sector-specific Q&As later, networking. So hold your horses. And meanwhile, we'll go back to what keeps you folks excited after all these years and keeping you folks going.
Okay, maybe I'll start first. So knowing that what I do will positively impact Singapore, I guess this is really what keeps me going, because I think at the center of it all, we should all have a heart to serve. That's why we're in public service. So in terms of my role as an auditor in AGO, we're actually accountable to the public in terms of ensuring that there's public accountability, because we want to know how the money is spent. We are all taxpayers. We pay tax through GST, income tax. I'm sure it's really relevant to all of you. You want to know how your monies are being spent. So thereafter, how we come in is that we'll report to the President and Parliament on how it's being spent. So that's why I find my job extra meaningful in this way, because we're actually given the authority to audit under the Constitution. And this really gives me a sense of satisfaction knowing that what I do will impact Singapore.
Yeah.
So for me, I joined MOF end of last year, just in time for this year's COVID crisis.
Great timing.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, so actually one thing that I got to try this year that I didn't get to do before is actually, because I'm actually helping to reply some of the public feedback about the budgets that was released this year. So you get to see firsthand how your policies have affected people's livelihoods and really hear people's feedback about how they have been affected by this crisis and how they want us to help them, or how they thank us for having given them the additional support that they need to tide them through this crisis. So that's something that, I mean, it really reinforces why you're in the service in the first place. But even previously, when I wasn't in like customer facing kind of role, it is still, I mean, I still find a lot of meaning, because even though you are just a small cog in a machine, you recognize that all the small cogs are required to keep this whole government machine working very smoothly and to deliver services seamlessly to Singaporeans. Yeah, so I think that's something that I always keep at the back of my mind, regardless of which role that I'm in.
I think to add to that, I fully agree that, you know, one of the things I really enjoy about work is that we see very tangible benefits or tangible change as a result of what we do. And I think the experience in policy making and in other arms of government, even as a prosecutor, I think these are similar benefits of society that you feel. As a prosecutor, certain crimes have victims, and when you prepare yourself for trial, you actually have to interview the victim, understand sort of the emotional turmoil that they go through as a result of a crime. And when you build that sort of connection with the victim, it really motivates you to go to court and ensure that the offenders get their just desserts. As a policymaker, I think there was one experience that I had which really touched me as well. Under existing law, if someone is a victim of domestic violence, traditionally they needed to be within a family nexus in order to get a restraining order. But as a result of that, many people fell through the cracks. People who were unmarried for various reasons, or people who were just in a boyfriend-girlfriend sort of relationship. So there was a sort of gap in the law for a period of time. So as a result of that, MinLaw met various stakeholders, including voluntary welfare organizations who represented these victims. So they shared some stories about women who had been abused and battered very badly. Some were blinded. It was quite heart-wrenching. And as a result of these anecdotes that we shared, we we used the Harassment Act as a way to provide equivalent protection to people who were outside the family nexus. So when that change was implemented in Parliament, it felt quite fulfilling. That there was an actual gap that we were filling, and actual people that would benefit from this law. So I think there are lots of opportunities like that for everyone in public service.
Yeah, it sounds very meaningful. Let me move to the next question because it's somewhat related. Not every day at work can be a good day or your best day. What are some of the challenges that you face and how have you overcome them?
Maybe I'll start first. So, to be honest, I think people don't really welcome auditors with open arms. Yes. So I think the misconception is that they probably think that the auditors are coming in to pinpoint all their mistakes. So they will often ask us like, when are you finishing your audit? So because we totally understand that, because they have to answer to our audit queries on top of their operational work. So yeah, so we would definitely expect some form of apprehension towards us. So I guess what is the most important to me would that we should always try to aim to strike a cordial relationship with our auditees at the start of the audit work year, because there's a lot of coordination that's needed and we need to request for information from them so that we can proceed with our audit work. So this relationship is really important. So for myself, I will actually make an effort to strike a conversation with them. For example, if I ever happen to meet them in the pantry, because these kind of small acts of friendliness, I believe, can go a long way.
So now I know why you come and talk to me in the pantry, yeah, Jesse? I will always reply to your emails.
I mean, for me, I totally agree with what Jiaqi has said. I think some of the more common challenges, at least for me when I'm at work, it either usually relates to like two broad buckets. One would be, when you first enter a new ministry or department, like who do you approach for like the information you need? And second would be the issue itself. What do I need to take note of for the issue? And I feel like for these two buckets, I think a lot of how I overcome them at least is talking to people and my colleagues. I feel like leaning on my colleagues, getting their advice. I think that's at least for me, that's usually the first step that I take to sort of overcome the challenges that I have in my work. And I think it's also very important, I think not just for a job in public service, but I guess for any job to be very resilient. Like if you have a challenge and then you, for example, you are trying to find information for, like a certain policy issue and then you just can't get it, don't give up, try to look for alternative sources, I think speaking to people, I think that's a way in which I overcome my challenges.
I think that regardless of which industry, which job you're in, it's inevitable that there'll be tough times, good and bad times. But something that I think is a bit different about public service is that the work that you do, I mean, for me, I get an additional sense of satisfaction. Like, it's not just about bottom lines. It's really, you feel like the work that you do really affects the citizens, affects the people out there. And this is something that I think even when things get really, really hard, when timelines are tight, when the workload is really high, it's something that you try to remind yourself. And another thing that really drives me is because I get a lot of ownership in my work. So I think a lot in the projects that I handle, a lot of it, I get to decide what is scope, what is the direction, what's the methodology to take. And having that kind of ownership actually helps to drive me to put in like the extra 101% effort to really make it happen. Because it's not something I'm just taking instructions from someone, but it's something that I intrinsically want to make it happen.
Yes, I understand it. I think many people agree with you. I think we could go on and continue chatting forever. I would love to. But unfortunately, we only have 3 more minutes. So I thought maybe Joshua could help us wrap up with things you would advise for our audience, and then let the other 3 please jump in. But yes, 3 more minutes, so maybe 30 seconds each. Challenge.
I think the advice I give is that I think everyone's at a stage of their life where they're figuring out, where they want to study, what sort of course they want to do. but also don't lose sight of what side of career you want to have, because ultimately, like, university is just one step to your eventual career, which is going to take up 20-30 years of your life at least, or probably longer. So bear in mind in the long term, what sort of work you want to be doing when you make the decision of where to study, and of course whether or not to take up the scholarship. I think another piece of advice that I give is that it's always good to have a mentor or someone that you can speak to who's already in the workforce. So try to find someone like that in your life. Someone is maybe like 10 years your senior, or 15 years your senior, who can advise you, what your options are and how you can get there, so that at least when you go through your university experience and you start your work, there's something for you to aim towards. Yeah.
I fully agree with what Georgia said about knowing what kind of career you want. But maybe one thing that I like to add is really to be open-minded, because sometimes what you think the job is like when you're 18 may not be what it's actually like when you step into it. But to still remain open-minded, to accept the opportunities that come your way. It may not be what you originally thought it would be like, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be a fulfilling and meaningful experience for you nevertheless. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Always growth tomorrow. What about Jia T and Fanny?
I think what's important is always remember why you started off in the first place. Why do you decide to take on a certain scholarship, or why do you decide to study a certain course? I mean, at 18, I guess you won't really know what you want to do. But yes, I agree with Joshua on the point that you should go around consulting seniors or just to ask around. Yeah, yes. I think that's what's important.
Yes, indeed.
So I would agree with my panelists. I think for me at least, I think the important point is what Jia Ji said, like remembering why I signed up for the job, and always being prepared for changes, because for me as an open scholar, when you start the job, you learn new things, and then when you move on to a new ministry, you have to sometimes learn a whole set of new skills. And I think it's very important to be like open for all challenges, open to learning new things all the time. And to end off, I think this is a bit of a realistic note, but I think not just in the public sector, but I would think in the private sector, like no job is perfect. And I feel that there'll always be, maybe a certain percentage of the job that you don't really enjoy, certain things that you don't really want to do. But I feel like it's important to keep an open mind to learn new things, because doing the 20 or 30% that you don't really like is what helps you to do the 70% that you really enjoy, and knowing that you're serving other people.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Helps you remember the other 70% that you enjoy.
Yeah, because because the thing is that my friends all over in public and private sector, there'll always be like that 20% that, why must I do this? But it's like, you need to do it in order to do the 70 to 80% that you love. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for this very uplifting, but I also think very real conversation. Unfortunately, all good things have to come to an end. We could continue this conversation another time. But please let me thank my panel speakers before I give the audience more logistic information. Panel speakers, thank you. This has been very enjoyable. It's a very rainy Saturday morning, but I feel very awake right now. Thank you. Let me bid farewell to the four of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you for having us.
He was enjoying.
Yes, I did too. I hope the audience did.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, panelists. Thank you very much for joining our virtual information session today.